Audio.
Good evening and welcome to the January 14th Special Council Budget Meeting. Members of the public were able to watch and or participate in this open meeting using the following method. You can attend in person at the North Dumfries Community Complex. You can attend electronically via Zoom to observe the meeting or to speak to an item on the agenda. You can watch the live stream by accessing the meeting on the Township's YouTube page. Any written comments that were provided to the clerk was shared with council and will be part of the public record. I'd like to call the meeting to order and can have the people of the agenda council rooms, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Lewin, that council adopt the January 14, 2026 special budget meeting council agenda as presented.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. I'd now like to read the Indigenous acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Mutual people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada. But again, as I've said, these are only words. Our actions and how we react are the true telling of what our soul is like. But with respect, if we move forward with mutual respect all the way across, this country will be even stronger as we come and partner with the Indigenous people to make a stronger Canada. Let's stop and reflect on that. Thank you. Are there any disclosure period interest or general interest? Seeing none, items for discussion. 6.1, continuation of report number FIN 01-2026. The 2026 draft budget from where council left off at the end of January 12, 2026. Special council budget meeting. The draft 2026 budget book was released on December 8, 2025 and is available for viewing on the Township website. Now, there's no members of the public in attendance, so any members of council wish to, that's fine. Okay. There's no one registering. Tonight is a review of the draft 2026 capital budget. And then on Monday, February 2nd, we will follow up on any business items raised during the special council budget meetings and review the 10-year capital forecast and department business plans. I'd like to introduce Christina Box, Director of Corporate Services, Treasurer, who will provide a presentation on the 2026 draft capital budget. Christina, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you have just stated, tonight we will go through the draft 2026 capital budget and any questions council may have. I again have a short presentation to highlight some of the 2026 capital program and then I'm open for questions. When we were forecasting what the 2026 draft budget would look for capital, there were a few key influences. We are still following council's directive that we are utilizing our reserve funds for the majority of projects to fund them, with any taxation dollars being raised being transferred into the capital reserves. Again, in 2026, the only thing we were paying for out of tax levies was those transfers to capital reserves. We are still continuing to experience construction costs that are higher than normal or historical values, things that slowly crept up, seem to have crept up and then are staying high. So we thought maybe they might come down a little bit with supply chain management issues being solved, but they seem to be stubbornly sticking at the higher costs. So we have factored that into our projection costs. And the other thing that is of note is that we are still experiencing delays with the delivery timeline of the large and very specialized for specific vehicles. So those tend to be, we still have to order well in advance. One of our vehicles that we ordered last year, we are hoping will come in or of 2026, but time will tell. The proposed 2026 capital budget is just over 31 million. You can see from this that 25% of it will be funded from grants this year. We are proposing to take on debt for the net zero arena project. And then the balance of it is primarily from our reserves. Again, the tax levy there is really just funding those transfers for future capital. If we break it down into which departments we are spending the money on, not surprisingly, the leisure and community services is the largest share, as we have both arenas undergoing either expansion or renovation. You may recall back in November, there was a series of items that we had proposed being pre-budget approval so that we could get out into the marketplace. The free pickup trucks, the tender closed this week. We will bring to council the final report on the 26th of January for the award. The ACC major exterior rehabilitation has also been closed, and we're doing the final interview stages this week. So that again will be ready for award very shortly. There are other of the projects where either the tenders are just about to be posted or we are coming close to being able to finalize the tender documents to get them posted as well. Just some highlights from it. In the 2026 road projects, we don't have that annual roads project, but we have very specific roads listed. We are completing the last of Greenfield Road. We are upgrading the Brent Waterloo Road, reconstruction of Buttesby and work on Morrison Road. The Footbridge Road rehabilitation is scheduled for 2026, as are securing the permits for the Jedburgh Dam and the Piper Street bridges. We continue to replace our vehicles for their regular scheduled replacement cycles. And as well, there is one new pickup this year that is being funded out of development charges. There are a series of drainage programs and culvert replacements and repairs in it. And the two major projects is the exterior rehabilitation of the Air Community Center, and then of course, the net zero arena twin pad project. Just to highlight, sure we're all remember, but there is proposed $5 million of debt that would be issued on the twin pad. Our current 10-year capital forecast is projecting that would be over a 20-year repayment period at 4.75% interest rates. That rate is of course subject to change based on what the markets are available at the time. One of the things we did want to update council on is that we had originally expected the Cambridge boundary agreement to be approved by the provincial government as of today. And the funds would have flowed 30 days after the agreement was in force. That actually hasn't been approved at the provincial level yet. There is uncertainty over the timing now due to some specific regulations that tie into changes in election years. We are continuing to work with Cambridge and the ministry to further understand what that really means and what the timing is. But we wanted to highlight that in our 2026 capital budget, we are using 2.2 million to fund the ACC exterior rehab program and 848 for the net zero arena. So at this time, we don't know whether or not this agreement will be approved. So we have just created a few options for councils to start thinking about. There isn't necessarily a decision that needs to be made tonight, but this is for further consideration. So on the slide here, you will see three options that we have presented for different sources of funding or financing for those two projects. Option one is, we could delay basically every single major linear infrastructure project in 2026 and redirect all of those funds towards the two facility projects. And then we would repay or complete those projects in 2027 with the Cambridge Boundary Agreement funding. That is not our preferred option. It is just a option. Another option is that we can utilize the township's line of credit as interim funding to just cash flow the projects in 2026. This would result in some additional interest being incurred by the township on that line of credit. And then we could delay some of the minor or more culvert projects and redirect that funding towards these projects. And the option that probably makes the most sense at this point, should the boundary agreement 100% be delayed until 2027, would be to actually accelerate some of the debt financing on the Twin Path project. Right now, we have indicated that we are going to take out $5 million, and rather than taking it as one lump sum close to the end of the project, we could take out some of the debt in 2026, which would allow us to cash flow the project. And then we would take the balance of the $5 million in 2027. And the reason we were looking at that is, again, we don't have our final costing, so we are still working through cash flows, but we're anticipating about 65% of the net zero arena will be completed in the calendar year 2026, and the balance will be in 2027. So by splitting the funding, we can split our cash flow requirements and look at it from that perspective. And then the other thing we could do is just reallocate the source of funding between the two projects. Since almost $5 million then would be in 2027 for the arena project, we could redirect facility funds to the ACC this year and use more of the Cambridge money for the net zero. So in total, the envelope of what you've approved would be still utilized. It would just change which allocation between the projects. And that right now is the option that we are thinking makes the most sense with the information we have today. But this is again a worst case scenario if the agreement is actually delayed for a full year.
Mayor, the city manager from Cambridge and myself continue to have constructive comments with the regional director from municipal affairs. We're supposed to meet this morning, and since it was unfortunately canceled last minute, trying to secure a meeting either on Friday this week or Monday of next week. I'm anticipating that coming out of this next meeting, which will occur in the next few days, it will give us a better understanding of where the ministry is and what the path forward might look like. With that information, we would be returning then back to Township Council at the next budget meeting, which is scheduled for the 2nd of February. And we would be able to crystallize an action plan, obviously in the fulsome context of all information. So we wanted to put this out in front of council today, just to get you starting to think about that there are options or strategies. The reality is options 1 and 2, while we can reallocate money from our reserves, it would be at the expense of delaying certain linear infrastructure projects until 2027. Excuse me, so that we obviously can continue to secure the grants that we have eventually for the ACC rehabilitation, and of course the federal funds for the net zero arena. There are certain commitments in terms of timing for both of those two projects. So the problem with options 1 and 2 would be we would delay certain infrastructure projects, and staff is concerned about pushing out these infrastructure projects another calendar year, because we have got a good robust program. We are chipping away at our infrastructure deficit, but taking a year off just certain sections of our system would continue to deteriorate. Unfortunately, at some stage, it actually accelerates its deterioration. Option 3 does allow us to continue forward with our complete capital program. It is just moving funds around and taking the debt on a little bit earlier. However, the debt payment, the first installment, would not be until 2027. So it actually has no effect on the 2026 tax levy. And we were always modeling paying principal and interest on debt in calendar year 2027. So it just cash flows us a little bit differently, but in terms of the base budget and specifically the tax levy, it does not alter anything for calendar year 2026. So it gives you the most flexibility. It keeps all of your core programs in place. But it does require us to go to the region. We will have to appear, send documentation, including council resolutions and bylaws to the region in late spring. So that we be part of the fall 2026 intake. The region administers all debt, all of the area municipalities.
No option. Council Rums and Council Norman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to staff, I was just wondering the impact on interest payments with option 3. We're doing the debt a bit sooner.
So, Madam Mayor, obviously, we don't know what the interest rates would be at the time of debt issuance. We have always modeled, most recent versions, we had modeled 4.75%. We were notified that the region, if we were looking at spring of 26, it's at 4.68%. So we're still within our range of tolerance, but I obviously don't know what it would look like come fall. It might be even marginally more attractive if the Bank of Canada continues further rate adjustments between now and fall. But we are within the realm of that we have modeled, and we have carried that consistently because we were very conservative in our forecast when we developed the business plan. The council dealt with earlier in 2025.
Council
Madam Mayor, I guess the question I have for staff is, are we positive that the money will be coming through, or is there a chance that we won't get the money at all? If that's the case, then do we have a backup plan for that worst case scenario?
So, Madam Mayor, through the council, I have received no indication from the ministry that the fundamentals of the boundary adjustment are in question. It is more of a procedural matter. And part of it is Indigenous consultations, specifically with the Confederacy Chiefs of the HDI. And the second aspect is there is a provision in the Municipal Act that talks about within an election year, we are an election year as of January 1, through to November 15th, because that becomes the new term of council, that boundary adjustments do not occur. There is a provision in the legislation, however, that gives the minister the ability to put an exemption order to facilitate the transfer. And that's essentially what is under discussion right now. So the fundamentals of the boundary adjustment agreement are not in question. The instrument to make it happen and the timing is what's being discussed as we speak.
And I believe we have favorable outcome, a possible favorable outcome. So any other questions on this? Any other questions? Seeing none?
So we have a couple more slides.
Go ahead, proceed.
So I really only had one more slide, so I won't put it back up because it's kind of just the next steps and things of that nature. But in the report that was circulated with tonight's and Monday night's agenda, you will see there are 4 things added to the capital forecast from the December issuance, and that related to we were awarded a higher amount of the fire grant than we expected, so that is just balancing that up to what we actually were awarded, and we will spend it on the fire equipment. We also found out that we were being awarded $443,412 for road safety, and that is then in our forecast in our budget as well to spend on road traffic calming measures. There is also $45,640 to facilitate the light poles at Victorian Park Tennis Court to replace those and change them out. We lost one in a windstorm, so replace them all and fix that. And then the $25,000, we also were recommending to finalize all of the last of the power gate installment at the PW building to make sure it speaks with the security systems back at the town hall and it's one nice cohesive package. So that comes to the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions and follow up from either tonight or on Monday.
Councillor Rossi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is about the last two items, Ms. Brock's just talked about. 3.5, the lighting standards, at Victoria Park. So I understand, nobody can predict weather and things that are gonna happen. However, as council, we set a 5% budget. And we're hoping to stay within that budget. I know staff is saying that if you use the money for reserves, it's not going to affect the tax levy. However, when you're taking out of reserves and part of the tax levy is going into the reserves in a roundabout way, it does affect. Because we're draining some reserve that we're putting money into the reserve. So my question on that, specifically 3.5, is would it be smarter to try and replace the one standard and work within the requested budget of council and then put the rest of the project into their budget for next year, whatever parameters that we set? I'll just focus on 3.5 for now, and then can we go to 3.6? Rather than me having 50 questions?
Ms. Ross.
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Oster. So staff has identified 3 scenarios that are available to council. Each of the scenarios, if they were to be advanced, would draw funds from the reserve accounts for our facilities, but there would be a different amount. If council does not wish to have lit facilities at Victoria Park, it would be a lowering of service levels. And the cost to remove the network would be between $6,000 and $8,000. The second is just to replace the damaged pole itself, new luminaire, and the wiring, commissioning, ESA approvals related to that replacement system. And that cost is $95 million plus HST. That would then allow the continuation of full illumination of the 2 tennis pickleball courts at Vic Park. Option 3 is the most expensive, and it is with contingency and HST and the like. It is approximately $45,640. And it would replace all 6 posts, luminaires. It would be a new wiring network. And the poles and the wiring would actually be taken outside of the fence, because right now they're actually inside adjacent to court. They would be moved outside the perimeter fence of the court facilities. So that we're removing conflict with users running out of bounds, potentially into the poles. As well as obviously modernizing and extending the life of those pole and light systems. So council has all 3 options. All 3 options, however, at different levels will be drawn from reserves. If you just deal with the 1 post today, then, and you want to deal with the balance next year we'll be drawing from reserves as well, because our capital program is meant to draw from reserve accounts. We were just saying that all the poles are roughly of the same vintage. And, there's no certainty about the integrity of the other poles. But the one that came down, was sheared right at grade. And the pole is in excess of 30 years of age, it's a wooden pole. So it would be vulnerable to depreciation given weather conditions
And there's, we have no insurance for the damage.
this would qualify under the insurance, given the order of magnitude of the singular pole.
So can I go to 3.6 now?
Did you want to make a decision on this one, or did you want to move on?
Well, are we making a decision right now
We can discuss it or later.
My only question, I understand the three options quite well. I understand how it's funded. My point was, when we have projects that come up like this, and we've had this project now, priced out. I was kind of hoping that it could work within our budget, but I understand in this particular case, like you said, we can't predict the weather. So those are just my comments on 3.5. Whatever council decides is fine.
Okay, you want to next, we'll go to council Austin. Go ahead.
Okay. So. 3.6. So my question on the yard was when it was budgeted for the original 38,500 and it was set aside, did we not know about this extra 25,000 at that time? Like, was this underfunded to begin with, or is this just the next level on top of what was being presented to us at 38.5?
CEO McMillan.
So it's a combination of both. Probably back in 2025, sufficient dollars were not identified by staff and carried into the draft budget for council's consideration. There was more work associated with getting power supply, upgrading the power supply to the gate itself, including conduit. The gate structure itself is more significant, so that you can't easily drive through it. It's a much heavier gauge gate, with having its own concrete anchored posts to secure the gate, given its weight, but also to make it as an effective anchor, so that it's not easily driven through. The technology in terms of the reader systems, the adjustment in part accounts for trying to network all of the card readers at our various buildings into one common platform, so that there's one central hub and there's the ability to program through all of our buildings that have card readers. And as we slowly renovate, rebuild, we are migrating over to a card reader system rather than individual seats. The advantage of the card reader system is that we can track who went through a door or a gate, as the case may be, at what time, on what date. And whereas with a key, we would have no ability to track who was in the compound or in the room, as the case may be. The card reader technology has the ability for us to, in the trucks, and this would be for fire services, because they use the fuel depot as well as our PW fleet and major community services. They would actually have fobs. So within about 50 to 100 feet, if they approach the gate, they could hit the fob, similar to what you would do for a garage door opener. The gate would open, so that as they're entering into the yard, the gate is already in the open position, and they would drive through. There's a sensor as you're leaving the property that would open up the gate. So fob is just to enter the property. It means that we would not have our vehicle staged on the road, creating a potential traffic hazard as an operator got out of the vehicle and then manually move the gate. That technology is more encompassing by software of the assistive devices than what we had originally costed. And that's where most of the additional funds are being deployed.
I'm not disputing. I'm not disputing the technology. I think it's you know, it sounds like it's needed. It sounds like a good idea. My question was, the extra 25,000, did staff not know this was going to be needed before Public Works created their budget?
See,
Don't think the overall order of magnitude of the technology is properly accounted for. Aspects were, but not all components, including the integration back to a central hub. So we have this ability now to link all of our buildings, both camera systems as well as potentially security board systems back to the central hub. So there's one reader where all information is. And because of investments in internet and fiber, we can now link all of our buildings, or as we change over our buildings, link them through that network.
Okay,
Councillor
thank you.
Roman. Councillor Roman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with regards to Councillor Oster's comments on 3.5 and 3.6, I understand what he's saying, but my concern is that, are we being penny wise and pound foolish? I don't want to just take up a random approach and say, let's fix one pole at the Victoria Park for $10,000, and then come back 5 years from now and spend another $50,000 or $60,000 to fix the other 5 poles. Or same with the gate. There's an opportunity now where we have to set the people on scene to do the work. Let's do the work properly. Let's get it working properly. Let's not nickel and dime this and come back in a couple of years and spend more money, as we've seen happen so often. Let's do it right. Let's do it right the first time. Let's get this job done properly. I think that the staff have worked this costing out pretty well. There's no effect on the tax levy. We're using reserves. That's what the reserves are for in this particular case. So I'm not in favor of nickel and diming these two projects.
So I have to state that, I understand where you're coming from, but I also am appreciative of Councillor Austin looking through the details and bringing in those comments as well. I tend to agree, I'm more concerned with more poles coming over, falling at it. And, so that, but that's another, Councillor Austin.
So without reading between the lines and being direct about it, my point is, our job as council is to establish what we want taxes raised and how we spend the money. And we direct staff on creating budgets on how to spend taxpayers' money, so we stay at our dedicated 5%. And when we direct that, and then we get a budget, and then we get these reports that are asking for more money after the fact, the essence of it is we're not staying at our 5%. And that's my point on how we're spending the money. I'm not saying they're not valid projects, and I certainly wouldn't nickel and dime. But the thing is that if you say, well, it's coming out of reserves, well, the fact that we put tax levy money into reserves, and then we take money out of reserves to do this, in effect, it is affecting the tax levy.
Before I go to Councillor Roman, I would like to remind everybody, this is the 10-year capital forecast. The dollar figures are guesstimations, the best guesstimation we can make. Until we get the exact facts. So in this situations, we have more facts and more information. Councillor Roman.
The only comment I was going to make was that I understand what Councillor Oster is saying about 5%. That's a good target number, but our actual job is prudent fiscal management. It's not just sticking to a random number that we chose arbitrarily. It's actually what makes the most sense in terms of fiscal responsibility. If it makes more sense to replace all the poles at once and get that sort of opportunity to do that and save the money because we're doing the project at once, that's more prudent than spreading that work out over 10 years and spending twice as much money over a 10-year period. So I understand what he's saying, and I agree with most of what he's saying, but I think sometimes you have to look at what makes the most sense financially, what makes the most sense in prudent fashion.
Councillor Austin.
And I understand that as well. The problem is, by being prudent, we have to watch how we spend our money. The most economical thing would be to pave as many roads as we can and have the contractor give us a better price, but we can't afford it. And if we take that if we take that path with everything and say, well, let's just, replace all the lights because one light's broken. I mean, it's the same as saying, well, let's pave all the roads, let's be prudent because we're getting a better price on paving all the roads and rather than just 3 of them. It's just, we have to watch. We have to watch, especially now in today's economy, we have to watch, we have to be careful, we have to be financially responsible. Again, I'm not saying any of these projects are not worthy of spending money. But in today's day and age, we have to look at the optics of it. And the optics are, we set budgets for a reason, we spend money for a reason. And we have to look like we're doing this responsibly.
Ms. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One thing I'd just like to point out to council is for these 2 projects in question, the funding sources are coming from the Grand Bridge Energy Reserve and from the Gravel Aggregate Reserve. Both of those in 2025, we actually brought in slightly more than we had budgeted for. So it is using some of that excess funding that was generated in 2025 to complete these projects. With regards to the gate as well, we did invest in a slightly more secure gate because we are concerned about the security of high dollar assets and hard to replace assets as well.
And this is good debate. I'm not saying that. I would like to argue the pole things are old, and that's a concern. If they weren't old, then maybe it would have been justifiably just do one. But if one light goes out and then we find out the whole circuits underneath are from the 1930s and it's all gonna go, then we replace them all. Well, we take that chance because the liability, if anything happened in the future that we didn't do, is deadly. But it's a good debate and it should happen. Councillor Tillett.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to the poll and I, in a private conversation that was just happened to have after 2 days ago's meeting. Andrew had mentioned, or CAO McNeely had mentioned that the poll situation would also, by replacing them, they would also be in a different and better position. And I don't know if that was conveyed in today's meeting and would be a safety factor.
So the outside,
Yeah, exactly. So I like that aspect for that reason as well. I do believe that if it wasn't for that, I'd probably be in favor of postponing it. Maybe if it wasn't, if it would, because I don't think it would really make that much difference. People who put poles in, they're not that much. They can ram those out pretty quick, and it's pretty easy when they're that kind of contractor. So if it wasn't for that and it was just replacing the pole, then I'd probably be in favor of just postponing it, but do the one that we need to, and then wait until we have a surplus year where we're doing better instead of going into deeper debt. So I would say at this point, I would be in favor of doing all the poles in that particular situation, but that's the only reason really why.
But just to correct what you said, we're not going into deeper debt. We have a surplus on both of those accounts this year that we did not expect. So that counts, Rob Roycroft, I almost went to your council, is that in the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarification. The reason we're coming back, Councillor, for this one particular thing is you don't see the money that we returned back in for projects that finished under budget. The number of projects we did at PW this year, we did finish under budget on all the projects. There wasn't enough money in the security side project to do the project last year. But we can't take the money from something else that wasn't assigned for that, so it has to go back to reserves and get it back to you and ask for permission to spend it again. We did anticipate we could do this. We were doing more than we thought we would have to do on the project itself, including licensing and stuff. So this will be the correct amount of money to finish the security side of things, but what you're not seeing is some money that went back into reserves where we finished under budget significantly in other aspects. But I can't go spend that money on security without your permission because it's already approved.
And this is exactly what budgets are supposed to be. This discussion, this debate, this information sharing, so we come out stronger and better. Councillor Austin and Councillor Rowland.
thank you to you, Madam Mayor, to Rob Raycroft. And these are the sort of things that is the sort of information that is helpful to us to see, why and how these are, because when we look at simple reports, and this is basically a simple report, it doesn't tell a story. It just says, you know, like when you're looking at it from like a council point of view, you're looking, okay, well, let's stay within this budget. And it's like, you create a budget for anything. You say, okay, I've spent all my money on this. Well, now I want to do this. So I'm just gonna ask for more money, but when you get the story and you get the understanding of the whole workings of it, it makes a little bit more sense. So thanks for that information.
Councilor Roman.
Big Man Mayor, I just wanted to comment on what Councilor Chili said about the lighting standards, the poles. If you look at the report on 3.5, it says the cost to replace the one pole by itself is $9,500, but the cost to replace all 6 is $41,000. So really, it's better pricing to do all 6 at once than it is to do. We do the 6 individually, it would be $60,000 as opposed to $40,000, $41,000. So that's the only thing I'm looking at is, the difference between 2 and 3 is that 3, we get all 6 replaced and we're saving about $20,000. That's how I'm looking.
And see, I think with this discussion, we come up with more knowledge. The public would look exactly the way you looked at it. And yet now we know further that a lot of it was from surplus, and so something to get forward, but back, and the dollar figures you just mentioned. This is what budgets are supposed to be done by. We're not supposed to see it here and nod our head, and we're not supposed to rip everything apart. But we're supposed to have really good discussion that enlightens everyone and anybody that's listening to this. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. I commend you all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councilor Osner?
Just one more comment to add on to what you said, because when I've had conversations with residents about money being spent and stuff like that, that's how they look at it. They like, oh, well, another $46,000. I'm not like it. In one sense, when you're running a business, the corporation is a business, you look at the most prudent way and the most important way of doing things. The average person that's paying their taxes, they're not, they don't care about that. They just care about, I don't want to see my taxes keep going up. Why are we spending? Why are we spending? And then there are reasons. There are safety reasons. There's savings, like what Mr. Raycroft just said. So, if people were more involved in the decision, then they may look at it and say, yeah, you're right, it makes sense. So that's why it's good for, as you say, this kind of conversation. I'm hoping that if anybody's watching this on YouTube, they can get if they have a problem with it. I'm not saying they do, but if they ever had a problem with it, that maybe this information now makes a little bit more sense that it's really not money for naught.
And I have to say, we've come a long way since we first came into office, the 3 of us. And we are one of the strongest financially municipalities, one of the strongest in the region. And we should really count our blessings and thank God for the staff we have. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question with regards to, item 3 in the book about the corporate broadband enhancement strategy phase 1. This is something that we've been looking at for a number of years to improve internet services across our business areas. I was just wondering, and this is again, it's a carry forward. What sort of, I would like to have some more information about the status of this strategy, but I was also wondering whether or not we are also looking at different options besides broadband, like there's Starlink is available, satellite internet. I know I'm being controversial.
Yeah.
But satellite internet is becoming more and more reliable, and broadband internet is, becoming older technology. So are we having these kinds of conversations as well? And what does that? Yeah. So I think I'll just start with those questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
CEO McNally?
So, Madam Mayor, Councilor Wilson is correct. This is a carry forward. We did have discussions with both Val and Rogers late 24 and again several times through 2025 about dealing with some pockets where we have gaps of fiber, largely in our employment areas. Unfortunately, the province and the federal government, when they look at reasonable service level, they're using what they call a 50-10 factor. which is the upload, download speed. And that's fine for most residential uses. But when you're dealing with the business sector, they're moving typically larger blocks of data. And, we should be closer to the 210 range rather than the 50-10. Most of our employment areas now have fiber to the address. There are a couple of small pockets, and Blair and Guthrie is probably the largest singular pocket where we do not have that higher order fiber to the address to serve the businesses. And this money was meant to incentivize those two businesses to perhaps then install and commission fiber. As I said, I was hoping that they were gonna tag it to some other projects that they were gonna be doing in the village. They actually decided not to pursue other projects in the village in 2025. Some part aligned to some recent CRTC rulings about how they can recover when other companies in town tap into their systems. And so there's been a cascading effect on these types of projects. I believe that's now been resolved to some extent. The reason why Starlink doesn't necessarily work from a municipal perspective is we would actually, if this is trying to create fiber for incentivize, assist our businesses, grow our businesses, perhaps attract new business opportunities to our employment parks. Starlink is an individual subscriber. So it's actually the business that would take on that yearly contract or multi-year contract, as the case may be. This is trying to incentivize and attract new business opportunities, grow existing businesses in our employment areas. And I do agree with you that there's been significant investments made by Starlink. There is now better resiliency in their low orbit satellites. Province of Ontario is actually utilizing that system. So they entered into a contract. I'm not too sure if they actually tore up the contract, but they were actually looking at this technology for some of the remote areas of Northern Ontario where point-to-point towers just isn't practical, given either heavy vegetation and or undulating topography. But certainly in more urban areas, fiber is still the best technology in terms of security, as well as reliability in terms of moving large blocks of data.
See, McMillan, very interesting, because I just happened to be sitting beside a person that provides internet for businesses and is underground bridge energy. Because when they took over the Brant one, was it Brant or Brantford? Yeah. And so they're doing internet for the business corridors. And I sent him to the 401 corridor, but that's the 401 is covered by Rogers. But I never thought of Malaire. Maybe you can, I think it's James. I think I have his card somewhere. So maybe you can connect with him.
Well, I've had some brief discussions with Grand Bridge, but it wasn't with that individual. It was actually the president, CEO. Not too sure how much longer that program will.
Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And then just as a follow-up question, since this thing is kind of, it feels kind of like come up in the air depending on whether or not Rogers or Bell, is this something really that belongs in our capital forecast? If it's like, if it's kind of wishy-washy, like I honestly, I want these businesses to have internet. I'm not disputing that at all. I'm just wondering that, like, other projects, it's like, yeah, we're gonna buy like the fire rescue equipment, we're gonna go and do, but this one is kind of like just kind of hedging our bets, and I'm just wondering where that falls. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
CEO McNeely.
So trying to work with the two telecoms, because they're the two principal delivery agents, the Design Build Commission. And trying to link it to other projects that they were doing based on business case assessment in proximity. They just have chosen chosen not to make that investment. So we would actually have to issue an RFP. If we go ahead with this, and we would have to spell out the scope and that the township would be agreeable to pay up to a certain amount. To incentivize a telecom to make that investment. The intent or expectation is that would be perhaps enough to lower their one-time capital. And then to get the difference that they would be carrying, it would be their own dollars in this mix as well. Would be recovered over a reasonable period of time by the uptake from the businesses that would be able to tap into the fiber. Our benefit is we're growing or stabilizing on other areas. So does that in time mean more assessment or local jobs? That is the expectation. And that would be our return on investment. Through making this initial stipend to facilitate the sector to bring fiber to the address strategically in these public business funds.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So last time I brought up just the natural heritage landscape survey study that is currently for RFP. Thank you, Councilor. And I was just noticing that the Heritage Reserve Fund likely would not be able to cover the costs for such a program. So I have two thoughts about that. One was when I look at number 9, which is the official plan comprehensive update. And this is a question that through you, Madam Mayor, to staff, is something like the cultural heritage landscape study, would that fit under this kind of capital plan? So I think that would be question 1.
CEO McNally.
So Madam Mayor, we did have the discussion at council a year ago, no, 8 months ago, about rolling it into the official plan update. What we did indicate to council was the timeline to undertake the official plan would be much more encompassing. And there was a desire from council to have, if they advance forward with the cultural heritage landscape study for Sprague's done in a shorter period of time. And then done as an amendment to the official plan in terms of establishing the policies if the project was advanced. We indicated at that time, council would need to put more money aside for the official plan exercise. Because we had budgeted it based on servicing strategies, natural heritage systems, growth projections and modeling, creating new employment designations coming out of the rural investment readiness strategy that we did with the water EDC and the like. So we would actually have to put more money into the official plan exercise if we were going to roll in the CHL. Because it did not account for that scope. And as I said a few times, don't know what the market would require in terms of undertaking the studies. I had back of napkin identified an estimate of $80,000. As there's an extensive public consultation engagement attributed study, and it takes up more than a third of the budget. It's just on the engagement aspect.
Councillor Roman and Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just to comment on what the CEO said, if this plan back of napkin is $80,000, would that same $80,000 go further with regards to the CHL, with regards to other aspects of other CHLs? Would that $80,000 go further as part of the OP project as opposed to being a standalone project just for that one indicated area? I'm just wondering, like, will we get more bang for our buck if we put it into the 80,000 into the OP instead of just into the CHL as a standalone?
CEO McNally.
So Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Rowland, you will get a more robust assessment, data collection, consultation and engagement through a standalone exercise for the CHL. Because we would just do sweeping policies. If we were looking at multiple jurisdictions where you might advance the CHL. In other words, they'd be guiding principles that would inform a future screening of candidate locations for a CHL. I don't think that is consistent with the discussions that occurred in the latter part of 2025 as it relates specifically to Sprague's or potential other locales that might in time emerge in other parts of the township.
Council Rose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if we were to keep this as kind of more of a separate but partner project related to the official plan update, would a council be amenable to having a staff report brought back on February 2nd that kind of looks at what it would mean if we increased transfers to the Heritage Reserve Fund, kind of like 25, 50, like $80,000, like what that would look like. And if we wanted to try to remain tax neutral within or what that would mean.
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, council provides that direction to us. Yes, we were bringing that report to the next budget meeting. That was the intent of the February 2nd meeting, was to bring anything that came out of either Monday or tonight forward. And then obviously talk about 10-year capital forecasts and other aspects. So yes, we can do it. This will be aided because next Tuesday night, we have our Heritage Advisory Committee. And obviously, a large portion of that agenda is focusing on the last few properties that might be considered for Part 4 designations. So if the council's agreeable, recognizing that neither project is accounted for right now in the draft budget. You know, obviously I'll have a little bit more information coming over the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting next week. We already have the framework of the Sprague's Road Cultural Heritage Landscape. So if I look at both studies and combine that into a report to cost exposure, opportunities to fund based on current availability of dollars that have been set aside, because there are dollars set aside in the reserve. They are not sufficient in quantity based on an early estimation to complete both projects. Then I can tell you what the gap is and what opportunities council might have to make up the difference if we're going to deliver them both in calendar year 2026.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Council Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also had a question, just maybe a question to you or to staff. Just with regards to the footbridge, were we able to secure any provincial funding? I know we've been trying and begging and pleading, and I'm hoping that the province will be amenable to still helping us out with this bridge, since it's so integral to so many province initiatives.
Well, I've got multiple minister meetings and I just got one today. What was the Minister of Infrastructure, wasn't it? 2 o'clock on Tuesday?
So that invite was just confirming the room location.
Okay.
But yes, Madam Mayor, you have 3 separate delegations, 2 with Ministry of Infrastructure, 1 with Finance, focusing exclusively on smaller municipalities of 50,000 persons or less, and the implications of these larger order of magnitude projects, which largely don't serve our municipality, they're part of a broader, and I mean the word small r, regional infrastructure network. And you know, our tax base isn't designed to handle that scale of project. And that's, so Madam Mayor's got 3 delegations over the Loma conference starting Sunday through to Tuesday. And then tomorrow, Madam Mayor is appearing for another Ministry of Finance, part of the pre-consultation in advance of the provincial budget for 26-27. And significant portion of the talking points are talking again, once again, about infrastructure. So the province will hear it several times in different forms.
And
There are backup documents that go with each of those presentations. And this complements the discussions that Madam Mayor had with political staff at the Ministry of Finance on specifically bridges, and Hook Bridge was front and center. That we had in the early fall of 2025. So that narrative continues as we continue to push certain buttons. I know MPP Riddell has been well briefed on these and is very supportive of the framework of what we're talking.
I have to state that MVP Riddell also has been working really well for us and with us in regards to the Cambridge boundary adjustment. And has made headway for us. Any other questions or comments? This is really, oh, go ahead, Councilor Rose.
I just was wondering about the drainage improvements at Scannon Park. This was a new park, so I was just kind of a bit surprised to see that we already had to do a rather major renovation to it. So maybe can we get some more background on this matter through Madam Mayor just now?
CEO McNally.
So Madam Mayor, through to Council Williams. Yes, it is a new park. It's been open 2 years. Well used. We have a perched groundwater table affecting a portion of the property. And so what happens is when it rains, the water can't infiltrate because the groundwater is literally just below the surface. And
I know
so
people that are looking for water.
There's a township pool.
and so it's ponding. It is a very localized area. It did not come about in when we did the action borehole logs. And so we weren't able to identify this localized high groundwater table, that specific location. It did not affect or we incorporated design parameters to deal with it in other areas where the purpose court was, the splash pads and the like. But in this section, we have this perched groundwater table, it ponds and it sits for a while. And it's actually causing other issues and elsewhere in the park because we're getting some cases water cut in the grass. In other cases, we're getting ponded water underneath the swing sets as the water backs up eventually, if we have multiple days of rain. I'm worried also about affecting electrical conduit and wiring that we have a proximity to this, as well as the integrity of the path that goes through there.
So what do we do with it? Can we truck it to other parts of it? No, can't. What can we do with it?
So Madam Mayor, we've done an internal design by staff. We are gonna do something similar to what we did at Schmidt Park, where we're going to put in big old piping. We will have in some cases what we call turf grates at surface. In other locations, it'll just be exclusively the big oak, and it'll be networked, and we will drain it underground through a header to a catch basin that's at the south limits of the park, and then it'll flow into the storm sewer system.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Oh, Councilor Rowland, go ahead.
Hey, Madam Mayor, so I only have one question for staff, and I'm sure we discussed it, I just can't remember what the answer was. What happened to the Hall Street reconstruction project? Does that have been pushed to 2027?
CEO McNally.
So Madam Mayor, we did get direction from council back in late 24, but we didn't get the funding we had hoped to support fall, and council did push it out. I apologize for memory, I can't tell you whether it's 27 or 28, but we did move it out. It's shown in our capital forecast. It was shown in the August report and it's carried in the document you'll see on the 2nd of February. So it is in the forecast and it's either 27 or 28. The design work is done. That's shovel ready, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's just the allocation of dollars to be able to deliver it.
It's one of the topics that I just need you tomorrow and on the, I'm gonna just slide it right in there. That's gonna take up our whole roads budget for 1 year, we looking at. Going once, twice, any more questions or comments? See, you only me.
So, Madam Mayor, if you remember, there were some business items that we discussed on Monday night. We did not deal with them. We wanted to have the full discussion tonight, so if council's at a point where you wish to provide direction, we do have the resolution that talks about additions or deletions to the budget. If I just link in the discussion that Councillor Williams had, a friendly modification to include the Part 4 Heritage Designation properties. We just modified this resolution to add, staff will be returning on February 2nd with a follow-up report on funds necessary to support Part 4 Heritage Designation review, as well as the funding necessary to complete the cultural heritage landscape spreads district and funding sources to complete both projects.
So sure. Really fun. It really is. You asked the right questions. You didn't hesitate. You didn't just accept. This is what a good council does. You don't always see it.
Mm, weird.
You like that home safe and sound?
I think so.
Why have you not been home since?
No. I've been here.
Yeah.
I've been well since. I've been here.
And so, you know, this one. So now I got a family into a money, but we be giving it in Cambridge, we have to be in Swift at Wyoming. It's nice, yeah. It's a good idea. So that's also tomorrow night, and I'll be Friday, and then back there, and we jet to many of them, and then Saturday, he's traveling also on Sunday. Everybody. But if
You just want to make that resolution a little bit longer for council.
Yeah.
You like reading.
So you only added one. What up is there?
Yeah, we started,
that's a big direction, was February 2nd. Do you want me to seal it in some of your stuff?
I started that one.
Oh, you don't know?
So the last one, was seal it.
Like eight.
Yeah.
8 months. Don't do it. It's fine. Let's go on, just jump and see all together. Just be interested to see what else they're doing. Then let's go. Then fine.
It's Greg's from
It's brought down, what's about it?
SPRE.
Also, affordable.
R
So,
A
that's all.
on.
Just in case I ever go to a place that has pickleball, just to know that it's learning that.
After the meeting. There's a couple people I know.
Ready? Councillor Richards? Go for it. She's-
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Moved by myself, sent by Councilor Tilly, that FIN report number 01-2026 be received. And that the draft 2026 budget operating and capital be amended to add the following new information. One, $47,485 grant applied to the 2026 operating budget and a matching $47,485 applied to the 2027 operating budget. Total grant award of $94,907 from the Growing Canada's Community Canopies Fund, GCCC. Tree planting delivered through the Green Municipal Fund program as administered by the Federation of Community Municipalities. An offset expenditure in both 2026 and 2027 in the amount of $47,485. Two, $11,485 be drawn from the Green Strategy Reserve account and added to the Parks Tree Planting account operating budget to align with the 50-50 matching contribution between the Township and the Growing Canada's Community Canopies Fund, the GCCC. Tree planting grant awards top up to what is already funded in the Public Works and Recreation budget account lines for tree planting. Three, $443,412 grant received through phase one of the Road Safety Initiatives Fund, the RSIF, be added to the 2026 capital budget for traffic calming initiatives. Four, adjust the 2026 capital budget for the fire department grant from the province of Ontario for firefighter protective equipment from $16,400 to $17,800. Five, add the 2026 operating budget property acquisition disposition expenditure allowance of $180,000 to be funded from the reserve land sales account. Six, add $45,640 to the 2026 capital budget to facilitate replacement of the tennis pickleball court lights and light standards at Victoria Park with expenditure to be funded from the Energy Plus reserve account. Seven, add to the 2026 capital budget $25,000 to facilitate the completion of the 2025 capital project installation of the power assist entry gate of the Public Works Depot to be funded from the gravel reserves. And number eight, council direct staff return to the February 2nd, 2026 special council meeting, fall report regarding funding necessary to support a Part 4 heritage review and funding for the Heritage Cultural Landscape District for Sprague's Road and funding sources to complete both projects.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Councillor Elton, the bylaws, please, read first and second time.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Roman, that the following bylaws be read a first and second time. Bylaw number 3613-26, being a bylaw to cover the proceedings of special council meeting held on January 14th, 2026.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Councillor Tilly, favorite reading the bylaw, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Arthur, that bylaw number 3614-26 be read a third and final time, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Adjournment, Councillor Osmer, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Wims, that whereas business before this council meeting has been completed at 7:13 PM and be it resolved that this meeting adjourned.
All those in favor? Thank you.